And I grew up in a home where, you know, purity wasn't really talked about. If anything, it was just, hey, don't get pregnant, you know, don't get pregnant, don't catch anything, you know, and I really, there wasn't anything about value. There wasn't about, hey, your body was meant to be valued, to be treasured, and God is a God of pleasure in the right context. And you can see that in the Song of Solomon's, but in the right context. So I grew up in a place where my two best friends lost their virginity at 12. And I held on to mine till the end of high school, and that was a big deal, you know, because I was the only one. So I was the good girl till I got out of high school and I got into my first relationship. And I didn't really think everything in there was like, well, maybe it can end in marriage, you know, or I can love, and I'm supposed to love unconditional because that's godly, you know, so I'll just, you know, I'll take what I can get. And that became a real ugly cycle of what secular dating looked like for me, or worldly dating, or just being completely surrendered to my flesh and not my spirit. In 1994, I got saved by an uncle in the Philippines, and how important it is if you're a father today, or if you're single that hopes to be a father one day, how important it is for you to cover your girls and really teach them the value of who they are. This all goes back to you if you're a Christian man. Start looking at your sisters not as hot chicks, but as sisters. Because a lot of that, there's so much that goes to your value, or you just not feeling like you have any to give. Because after a while, nobody ever told me that every person I slept with was going to take a piece of me, that I'd be soul-tied in some way. And by the time I would, you know, potentially hope to get married, we'll see what was left with. But when I got saved, my uncle gave me a book called Passion and Purity. Anyone familiar with that? Elizabeth Elliot. It's an amazing book. It's the first time I ever saw what a godly courtship could look like. And it was so inspiring, and it was so beautiful. And in my heart of hearts, I wanted that. You know, but I didn't see any model for that. I didn't know one person who was going through a courtship. You know, so I was living with someone at the time, and I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to walk that, and I didn't know how to reconcile that. I knew the Word said that, you know, I could come to the Lord, that I could repent, that I could be forgiven, I could just confess where I was at, and God could help me turn that all around. It took me, wow, another 2 failed relationships for me to go, okay, Lord, I want all of you. I want you to show me. Just show me. Show me what it's really supposed to look like. Show me who I am. And so I started this journal, and I wrote a 2-year vow to Jesus. And I said, no dating, no hand-holding, nothing. And I just want to fall in love with you, Jesus. And I want you to send me around the world and to people who are hurting and people who are dying, and let me share your love and your message. But the danger of those 2 years is I had 0 community. I had no one else walking with me. I knew no one else who was walking in purity, so I had 0 accountability. And as amazing as those 2 years were, at the end of the 2 years, right at the very end of the 2 years of my completion of the vow, I ended up in a relationship, in a secret affair, and I ended up pregnant. And I chose to keep the baby. And as soon as I got pregnant, I made sure I came clean to everybody. Everyone thought, you know, hey, she's living this pure lifestyle and it's amazing. And I was so in shame. I fell into a place of such shame where I thought, God, I knew better. And I kept hearing this voice in the back of my head, which is the enemy, for those of you who don't know, that kept saying, do you think God can use you now? You have a ministry? God can't use you. You're dirty. You're stained. You can't go back. You know, even though I knew in the Word, as a believer, I knew it in my head, I knew it by my mouth, but it wasn't in here. So I wasn't free, even though I thought I was free. My one prayer was, Lord, you know, if you can have any mercy and grace on me, you'll put it on my son and make him a light for you. You know, and I started back on my path again, and I just thought, okay, I can pick this back up. And I ended up in 2 more bad relationships. Again, no community, no sisterhood, no accountability. At the second relationship, I stayed overnight, and I woke up in the morning, and he looked at me, and he said, good times, Ia. It's always a good time with you. And I felt sick. It was my wake-up call. I walked out of there trying to look calm and composed. I got into my car and I started bawling. And I was like, Lord, I'm done. I'm really, really done, and I want it your way. I want all of you. I want none of me, but I need your help because I need you. I rededicated my life to Christ at that time, and I allowed God to court me. And I said, Lord, I need you to show me who I am. Who am I to you? Who am I as your daughter? And what does love feel like? I went 5 years with a community this time, with a godly community, some incredible sisters to walk alongside me, to keep me accountable. And God showed me. I started doing a whole bunch of Jesus dates. You know, I'd have a candlelight dinner, me, my journal, and my Bible. And I was so at peace because I started to realize that God did have a purpose for me. He did have a plan for me. And in those 5 years, it took 2 years, though, before I got really free. It was in the second year of that, still had I was still struggling with some residue around my sexual sin and still really feeling like, can God really use me? You know, and I held back. I really held back for a while. And I went to church one day, and the preacher, the pastor was saying, you know, Jesus took the hit for you. Jesus took the hit for all of you with his blood. And if you're not living free today, then it's like you're putting him right back up there. And that hit me. It was the first time I felt like, wow, if I don't start living like I'm free right now and that God forgave me, and if I don't start living it with my heart, then I'm calling him a liar. And it was, my eyes opened. My eyes opened that day, and I started to realize that I do have a purpose, and the purpose was right inside my greatest failure. This is where my ministry began. So let's flash forward a little bit, a few more years later. I was at a wedding, and I happened to meet the man who would become my husband. I was at a point, I knew that I was at a place where I thought maybe I'm even called to singleness, because I was so happy. I was so free, and I was like, Lord, maybe, you know, it's me, my son, it's you, and we're supposed to do missions. And that's it, my heart was for missions. I really, really desired that. So I wasn't looking for a relationship at all. It was the last thing I wanted. I felt whole. You know, when Pastor Todd talks about that, being complete, being whole with the Lord and feeling like, hey, if the Lord honors that desire, then it's going to be a bonus, but not a necessity to the way I live my life. There was a joy that I had that I never thought I was going to have. I just remember times where I would be in my bed, and I know some of you may even be struggling with this. There were times where I would sit there. This is before I felt my freedom, and I really felt completely free. I started thinking, is this what my life is going to be like? Where every time I would laugh, I'd hold it back, because I felt like if I laughed and felt joy, it might mean that I wasn't sorry for what I did. So it was like this self-imposed prison in my mind. For a couple years, there was no real joy. And I feel like I missed a lot of the joy moments with my son, because I'd laugh and I was like, shut up. You know, you're not sorry if you start being happy again. And that was such a lie. When I met the man who became my husband, he was in the same place. He was getting ready to leave for Bible college within a day after we met, and neither one of us had any romantic intentions toward one another. And then it became a conversation via email. What is God doing in your life? What is God doing in my life? And it was just this real comfortable place to share. And he came back and we had a breakfast, and it lasted 3 hours, and we shared our testimonials with each other. And there was no holding back in that. There was no shame, and all I saw was grace. I saw such incredible grace in his eyes. And when we both started to realize there were feelings there, we had to have a conversation. And this time, my conversation was different. Whereas in my past, I just went with the flow. Just go with the flow. Let's see where this goes. That's what dating looks like today. You know, let's just go with the flow. Hopefully it turns into something. Hopefully I can also be called girlfriend, maybe, you know, and you just wait and let that go. But I was bold because it's where the Lord had brought me, and I didn't have time to play around. I said, look, if you have any romantic intentions toward me, you're going to have to state an intent to pursue me. I want to be courted. So courted. I'm like, let's go look up courtship and let's go talk about that. Let's have a conversation about what courtship's supposed to look like. And he honored that. He honored that and he courted me. We got to know each other's family and friends. We spent time with each other's family. We prayed together. We prayed in small groups together. We tested each other's hearts and we asked all the ugly, tough questions. So mind you, I had a son, right? At the time he was 6, so we had to really talk about what fatherhood was going to look like and what kind of accountability and who was going to discipline and were we going to be on the same page about it. What about missions? Turns out he's been doing international missions since he was 16. Less than a year after we met, he proposed. And even when we went to the Bay Area and he asked for my parents, for my hand, and God really restored that. You know, and 2 months later, we got married, and a year later, we conceived our child together. I have a 7-month-old son. God really took all that brokenness and all that yuckiness, and he honored it. He restored me. And one of the things that I want to share with you today is in Ephesians. Ephesians 4:18-24. They are darkened in their understanding and separated from the life of God because of the ignorance that is in them due to the hardening of their hearts. Having lost all sensitivity, they have given themselves over to sensuality so as to indulge in every kind of impurity with a continual lust for more. And I can look back in my life and I can see that my heart hardened with each relationship, with each time I gave my body away. And I became desensitized to God, desensitized to a calling that God had on my life. I believed in God, I believed in Jesus, I believed that I was saved, I believed that he forgave me. But it was just showing up and there was nothing in the eyes. The eyes were dead. You know, and I see that today with a lot of brothers and sisters that I walk around with. They show up, they say hi, but they're in that penance, in that place of condemnation. And you know, God just says it's not that. If you could just come to the end of yourself and just say, God, I need you. You know, when you talk about confession, it's just being real. You're not telling him anything that he doesn't already know. It's just for him to know that you know. That you know. And that if you don't have the strength to reconcile yourself back to God, just start with an invitation. You know, God, come into my heart. I want to know you. I want you to show me what love is supposed to look like. I want you to show me who I am as your son or as your daughter. I want to feel beautiful. I want to feel whole in you. I want your spirit. My heart today, when I talk about with Ro, we talk about it a lot, how far the Lord has taken us. He's such a good and gracious God. I don't know if you know that, because there are a lot of people who were raised thinking that God doesn't have a heart for you, or that God is the God who's going to condemn you, but Jesus said, I came to give life. I came not to condemn, not to judge you, but to give life, and to give it to you more abundantly. In Jeremiah, many of you know this one, Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you, and not to harm you, to give you hope and a future. But then he keeps going and he says, then you will call upon me and come and pray to me, and I will listen. See, some of you don't think God's listening. He's listening. I remember many times that I was on my floor, face down, bawling, crying for God to help me raise my son, help me. And I think in the deeper prayer of my heart was I was wishing that someone would bear it with me. You know, but I wanted a husband, was too afraid to think that I deserved one. To this, he says, you will seek me and find me. When you seek me with all your heart, I will be found by you, declares the Lord, and I will bring you back from captivity. I will gather you from all the nations and places where I have banished you, declares the Lord, and will bring you back to the place from which I carried you into exile.